everybody, I'm Tommy. This is The Love Boat. Welcome. Good to have you here. Brock Bandy, Ashley, Sandy, Wendy, good to see you. Just Joan, did I just see just Joan? Brock Bandy, I see Brock Bandy. It is a great dude. DS Kitty, hey Diane. Psalm, how are you? Psalm 118:28. I love it. I do too. Barbara Waite, what's happening? Do I see KM? There she is. Kristen Melinda, good to have you here. Rode her off for the 10th time today. Tired Buffalo, what's happening? Glad you're here. Kind of in the mood. Murph, what's up? I am in the mood, people. I'm not going to lie to you. So what I would like you to do is, if you are someone that, hey, John, good to see you, man. Listen, if you're someone that is open-minded, then this might be fun. Max Power, good to see you, man. Bam, finally subscribed. Love it. Love to hear that, man. P. Taylor, what's happening? Good to see you. Hey, Ashley G. All right, so here's the thing. We're gonna have a conversation. I'm gonna explain to you why people hate Charlie Kirk, because I think this is worth talking about, especially since this is the division in our country right now, country of America, North America, the United States of America, and from Massachusetts. Renee B. Good to see you. By way of full disclosure, I'm working on dual citizenship, so I live in a different country right now, but I have a lot of love for the United States of America. And when I say that, I'm referring to the amber waves of grain, the Purple Mountain Majesty, and all of the people that live there. The government I am not particularly happy with. Somebody said something last night about Palestine. In fact, they said it 600 times. I love the Jewish people. I'm not a particularly big fan of their government, right? You can do those things. You can separate what someone does from who they are. And our government right now, I don't feel like they support us. Absolutely, Mike Bragg. Good to have you on board. Welcome aboard. So let's start off with the obvious, right? If you go back and you look through history, Whitby Island Girl, good to see you. If you look through history, you'll find out that most of the time when we wrote laws, we based them on something. Nobody, especially in the early days, hey, Kelly, said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to come up with a bunch of random laws. Most of them were based on either polytheistic or monotheistic societies. And what that means is they believed in a God. And when you have if you set a bar, and I'm not trying to talk any of you into God right now. I think you should all probably find the higher power, but I'm not busting your chops about it. I'm just explaining why Charlie Kirk was hated. Hey, Natalie, good to have you here. Charlie believed that we as human beings are not particularly moral without some form of compass. Shouldn't be that difficult a concept. The problem is he could articulate it beautifully. So he had hot button issues when people talked about gun control drives people nuts. But he said you have the right to defend yourself. And in the Constitution, the Second Amendment gives you the opportunity to own weapons and start militias. They did this because they didn't want tyranny coming from the government, not coming from your neighbor. And you had the right to bear a musket, which at the time was the strongest military weapon that was made. It was basically the M16 of its day. Ali B from Tennessee, good to see you. Charlie was an amazing man. He was. He was also articulate to beat hell. And people don't like debating somebody who knows their beliefs. The problem without some kind of a system to which you can say, this is what I believe, and this is why I believe it. What you get is a society of people that go, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to marginalize anyone, which means if you want to be a dolphin queen king, right, a non-binary dolphin queen king, we're going to do everything we can to write laws to make sure that nothing bad happens to you in any way. You're going to get some privileged status when it comes to trying to get a job because, let's be honest, how many non-binary dolphin queen kings do we have? And I didn't make that up. If you think that's a funny, a non-binary dolphin queen king spoke at the Democratic National Convention a couple of conventions ago. So I'm not making this up. And when these things start to happen, you have to start going, well, we're a piece of crap. If you know, we're racist, we're this, we're that, if we don't allow these things to happen. For instance, if you say this lifestyle is as good as any other lifestyle, then you can head on down to the elementary school dressed in a thong and leather to go read to the kids. And if you decide that you want to fight that, we have a whole host of names that we're going to call you. And it makes society start to draw back. But they don't just draw back, they begin to hate the people, the non-binary dolphin queen kings, and some of the other people. Are we on the eve of destruction? I would like to believe that we're not. I'd like to believe that we're not. I would like to believe that we can survive this. They made an error when they killed this man. They thought they would silence a voice. And what they did was they created hundreds of thousands of other voices because I don't care anymore. And here's the thing. I know what Charlie Kirk believed on every single subject that man talked about. I just didn't have the balls to talk about it on my own channel because you have to get clicks if you want to stay on, right? If I go cold, I won't get sold. I'll get put in the back like a discount rack, like another can of beans, right? I know the game. You'll forget my name. I won't be here in another year. You got to keep getting people to look at you, right? So the last thing you want to do is anger anybody on any side of the aisle. But I think these are questions that really needed a guy with no degree outsmarted all of the college kids and opponents he engaged in debates. That's a big factor, the hate of losing. You're right. But the reason that he could win those debates is he had a ruler, he had a yardstick, he had a measuring device by which every single debate that you brought up, he was ready to work with. I have never heard Charlie Kirk talk. I only had heard a few things that people said he said. I never chose to take the time to see who he was. That's the truth. Well, I appreciate that truth, Just Joan. That's wicked honest. And it's a difficult thing to say out loud. But here, let me tell you what some of the things that people say he said. He said that trans people don't have a right to live. It was never uttered. Never came out of his mouth anywhere. In fact, you can look and see it's so easy to do this online. You can see where that quote came from and when the paper had to print a retraction. Now, I come on the boat and I say things all of the time, very often to point out absurdity. Like, obviously, the music industry is a great place to work, right? You just have to get sodomized to get a record deal. And who doesn't want to do that? Obviously, if you take that out of context, and I'm somebody that's a threat to any kind of institution, they'll put up a quote of me saying just that and nothing else. Or people on both sides of the aisle at this protest, there were good people on both sides. The next sentence was, of course, I'm not talking about the white supremacists. That didn't get into the equation. Do you understand? Let's do another one that's kind of fun. Put a 2 in the chat if you're aware of the fact that Donald Trump was convicted of rape in New York for a woman who said that he raped her inside the Tiffany store, I believe. Yeah, Jean Carroll. If you've heard this, right, then put a 2 in the chat. You guys are manipulated media, both good and bad. Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's the thing. Both sides use it. Both sides absolutely manipulate the media. So this has to be something that you take a little time to research. So everybody did hear that Donald Trump was convicted in court of raping Jean Carroll. Here's the problem. That never happened. If you're shocked by that, and trust me, I'm going to tell you why, but if you're shocked by that, put a 3 in the chat, because the news outlets absolutely told us that's the truth. She sued him in civil court, which has nothing to do with criminal court, and she didn't sue him for that. She sued him for slander because of some of the things he said when that came out. But 3/4 of America believe he's convicted of rape. How many times do you hear people get up and say the man's a convicted rapist? No, he's not. Convicted rapists go to prison. This was a civil case that was brought by a law that they wrote into the books so that she could do this. That's the truth. There's nothing political about that. You can research it, right? Research it and you will find out I'm telling you the gospel truth. He was convicted of slander against this woman. And you're familiar with slander is? Yeah, it's all BS. And the problem becomes, in this day and age, the attention span of the average person on YouTube or any other platform where we go to see this stuff, because nobody watches the news anymore unless you're a bit of a dinosaur, right? I'm not being disrespectful, but we grew up in the time of television, right? We didn't grow up in the time of the internet. So there's a lot of people that still watch either NBC or Fox. Either one you're watching has a political leaning that is very hard. What you should try to do, in my humble opinion, is to figure out what you believe in and be able to articulate it. Now, one of the other hot button issues, you want to see me demonetized quick as hell? Yeah. One of the other hot button issues was pro-life versus pro-choice. And he catches a lot of hell for this. Now, I'll tell you something. One of the things that comes up in the debate every single time, because it's been coming up since 1973, right, is, well, what if it's going to kill the mother? What if it's incest, or what if it's rape, right? So very often in debates, Charlie Kirk would say, okay, here we go. How about if we give you that? So any of those issues will allow abortion. Would you then be cool with making the other ones not legal? And the answer to that is always not able to be answered, because what they believe is the morality of each person should decide what the law is. Now, that's a suck-ass concept, pardon my French. And the reason it is because I'm a convicted bank robber, right? So at the time, my morality said the most important thing on planet Earth was getting heroin. Does that make me a good person? Not while I'm actively in addiction. I promise you wouldn't like me. But if you go with the fact that morality is something that each person gets to decide, then you can't say Hitler's a bad person. And obviously, the man was a bad person. But if you say, of course he was a bad person, you have to say, why is he a bad person? Because morality, at some level, has to be legislated. Because you have to punish people that break moral laws. But who decides what the moral laws are? Well, about 30 years before Hammurabi in Sumer, there was a king that came up with some of the first, in fact, the first laws that we ever know of that had been written down. And they didn't just govern social stuff. They governed trade and all kinds of things that were outside just the 10 Commandments type of stuff. You don't kill, you don't do this, you don't do that. But once again, there was theism in this. They said that the reason that these things are the way they are is because of the fact that the gods say so. Now, you may not like that, but it's a damn yardstick. And if you go the other direction, then we end up with where we are now, where if you look at laws that are being passed concerning very small segments of the society, things like this. If I had gone back to 1975 or 1985 and said, men are going to be competing in women's sports, they're going to say that they identify as a woman, and a guy with 60% more muscle mass than anybody else is going to come in and just destroy people in the events that they do. You'd go, no, that doesn't fly. But you can go watch a boxing match between a man and a woman, and it's one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen in my life. I mean, we are literally letting people get into a cage and beat the hell out of each other from two different genders. Where is that morally solid in anybody's mind? And the answer to this is, if you spent enough time in the echo chamber, then anybody's morality is okay. So if that's what you believe, we can't tell you otherwise. Charlie Kirk didn't believe that. They like to call him a Christian nationalist. What he said is that he believes that the laws that were written down in the United States were based a lot on biblical stuff. People like to say, no, they got out of England because they wanted separation of church and state. That's not a fact. They got out of England because they wanted the right to worship whatever they wanted in whatever way they wanted. They didn't want to be told how to worship. It didn't say they didn't want them to worship. All right. Hey, David, good to have you here. So on the pro-life, pro-choice, here's what Charlie believes. I'm going to give a trigger warning. I don't ever do stuff like that, but I'm going to give a trigger warning right now. So if you want to bail because you don't want to hear what I'm about to say, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Things lose a whole lot of steam if you continue to say them over and over and over again, and you don't look at the meaning of them, right? This happens constantly. Call someone a racist these days and people go, right? Because that's all they do is call people racist. In the old days, he called somebody a racist. It was really heavy duty, right? Because there really wasn't a lot of that. Honestly, whether you believe it or not, we all tended to get along a lot better before they started dividing us into a bunch of different groups. But I'm going to tell you something. The word abortion has lost a lot of its sting. I'm going to tell you in about 6 seconds, as kindly as I can, how that process works. If you don't want to hear it, you might want to leave. But when they go in there, into your womb, they inject a needle into the baby's skull. And then they put acid, cyanide acid, inside the brain cavity. And then they crush that child so that they can suck it out with a vacuum. Now, there are a lot of people on planet Earth that believe that that is murder. And the reason that they believe that is because they have a yardstick that says all children should be protected. And people go, well, where does conception start? So what you're saying is that the value of somebody that's 2 months old, right, is not as equal to the value of somebody that is 11 months old. Why is it that 11 months old, you can't go, this child is interfering with me going to college. This child is interfering with this doing this. I would like to remove it. Now, most people will go, oh, come on, that's absolutely disgusting. There's no one would ever do that. But you'd be wrong, because there have been votes in Congress to allow you to take your kid home, right, for the night. See if you want him, kind of like a puppy. If you don't, bring him back, we'll abort him. If you think I'm playing, look it up. When you don't have a yardstick, and you don't have to agree with my yardstick, but we better come to an agreement of a yardstick of some kind, because if we don't, we're going to get this. And that's how you get people who think eugenics is a good idea, to kill people in the womb if they happen to be a little less than perfect. And you go, yeah, but nobody really, we gave somebody a Nobel Prize for that. Or how about Tommy's a criminal. The guy robs bank. I got a really good idea. We'll stick an ice pick through the little corner of his eye. Won't touch his eye. And we just go up there and go like this, around in circles right here on the front. It's called a frontal lobotomy. The guy who came up with it got a Nobel Peace Prize because we were just going to scramble the minds of everybody that they deemed not quite right. And the problem with that is we had to sue all of them, right? We had to pay everybody off that got that. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. And you look fantastic in green. David, thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I really am. I got to get back here. There you go. The thing is, you as a woman decided to have sex, and you know having a baby is a possible result, and you don't get to kill it just because you are selfish. There is adoption. Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing. This is the most difficult subject in the world, and I get that. Unless, of course, you have a yardstick. Unless you believe that all life is precious, and if you happen to believe that all life is precious, then a 3-month-old or a 4-month-old is somehow not worth as much as an 11-month-old. We start to get into a gray area where we say, well, no, it's about consciousness, right? It's about consciousness. And this is an argument you hear all the time. Consciousness starts after the baby comes out of the womb. And the truth of the matter is, that's not really true, right? The eyes don't come online. I've told the story 1,000 times. When they handed me my boy, Spanky, and I looked down at him, and I looked in his eyes. He wasn't seeing me. Science will tell you that straight away. He wasn't seeing me. He was staring off into nothingness because the eyes hadn't really come online yet. In fact, moving the arms, doing any of that stuff hasn't really come online yet. So are they conscious then? Were they less conscious inside? They feel pain. They feel all kinds of stuff that you go, well, it's a potential life. Another argument comes out from the you hear all the time, especially when people would argue with Charlie Kirk is, what if you got a person at the end of their life and they're damn near brain dead, right? Or they're in there and they're being kept alive by a machine. Can you kill that person? Why can you kill that person? How is that considered okay, but aborting a child is not? Once again, you get back to a very difficult thing in terms of the morality being everyone's. If you have a yardstick, what you say is pretty obvious stuff. The child is a potential life. The person at the end of their life who is brain dead is a potential death. He's never coming back online. And the baby is nothing but potential. We have aborted in the United States somewhere around the ballpark, right, of 7 or 8 times what the Holocaust was. And I had a woman give me all kinds of hell. She said she was a white woman, and she lit me up like there was no tomorrow. I left her comment up. I didn't take it down. And she said, I'm a white woman. If it wasn't for Planned Parenthood, blah, blah, blah. Excellent. I'm happy for you. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at the statistics of what they abort, it is predominantly black. And if I would be pissed off by that. Q's pissed off by that, especially when you consider that the people that started it and called it the Negro Project. It sounds a little bit racist to me. One of the other things you hear all the time, people talk about with Charlie Kirk is DEI. And we talked about it the other day. The big quote, and I get 4 emails a day from this now constantly. And those emails say, he said he would get off a plane if he saw a black man behind the wheel. Never happened. Never happened. What he said was, and tell me if this sucks, he wants a meritocracy. It's a pretty cool concept. Meritocracy. Are you the best candidate? Yes. Are you black? Yeah, fine. Get behind the wheel. Everybody's happy. But what if you start getting on planes and you realize that DEI was used in the hiring of pilots? Now, when you look in the pilot and you see somebody that happens to be a minority, you think to yourself, was this the best pilot? Or did the government decide that you had to have 5 of these, people of this race, 5 of this sexual gender, 5 of these people who are non-binary dolphin queen kings? I want the fool behind that yoke in the cockpit to be the most talented person in there. And let's forget about medicine. How do you want your doctor, you want your oncologist to be hired based on their skin color? I sure as hell don't. And here's the thing. If you have that yardstick, you know what else you come up with? That's racism by definition. You're hiring somebody based on the color of their skin, not on the content of their character. That is racism by definition. So when he sits down to argue these points with people, there is no point you can argue because the man has a compass that determines what his morality is. You don't have to agree with his compass. At the time, all he was doing was going to college campuses. He had a radio show. Hey, Relatable Reese, good to see you. He just had a radio show. Right? This wasn't a candidate, but what he was a threat in a way that they hadn't seen in a really long time because he could articulate his point without ever raising his voice. Everyone talks about how cruel and hateful he was. Bull crap. He talked to everybody. Do you know that the day before he died, he sent an email to Van Jones? They did not get along for a lot of obvious reasons. Van Jones is very much on the opposite side of the political spectrum, and they don't agree on almost anything. But he sent a letter to him and said, you know what, I'm paraphrasing. I know we don't get along much, but I think we can have a talk as gentlemen. I could respect your opinions. You could respect mine. We may not agree, but how about coming on my show? I would love to have you on to talk to you about it. And Van Jones sat on it for a couple of days, but he came out, I saw a short where he was talking about it. And he just said, with all the stuff going on in the United States, don't blame any of this on him, because that's not who he was. He wasn't hateful. But what we have is the Dunning-Kruger effect. These are people that don't know enough about the subject matter, right, to realize that they don't know anything about the subject matter. These people, they're so sure that this man said that about black people. It never happened. Hey, one of my favorite movies of all time is Casablanca. Maybe one of the best, right, that was ever made. And the most popular line from that movie, Johnny Scoville, what is it?
There's a whole lot.
Play it again, Sam, right? Play it again, Sam. It's one of the most quoted movie lines in history, and it does not appear in the film. Did you know that? Put a 2 in the chat if you knew that the line "Play it again, Sam" does not ever get uttered by anybody in that film. That's the truth. Rick, who owned Rick's Cafe Americain, he's the main character. He's played by who was that again? Can't think of his name. The great guy, had a bit of a list. One of my favorite actors, but right now his name is escaping me. But what he said was, play it. He played it for her, play it for me. Never said play it again, Sam. It's just one of those things. But what happens is, if it becomes part of your echo chamber, if it becomes part of a societal thing, people will just repeat it over and over and over and over again. Bogart, thank you. Humphrey Bogart. One of the other issues that really got a lot of press was this guy Garcia. See, we sent this MS-13 guy out of our country. And I'll tell you something. I'm not 100% happy with what we did. I am a guy that researches. I don't think they should have sent him back to El Salvador, because sending him back to El Salvador was a country that he was going to be in a lot of trouble for. But it is where he is from, right? And their argument is he didn't get his day in court. He had more court hearings trying to stay in the United States of America than probably anybody in history. It took 4 years. And the judge said to him, you can be deported at this point for any reason. That was the last court date. So miss me with that BS that this guy didn't get a court date. By the way, he beat his wife. He also beat his kids. And he was an MS-13 gang member. How is it you can champion that jackwagon and think that a guy that went around college campuses and said, let's talk about how we disagree, is a fascist who is worthy of death? And the answer to that question is, you're an asshole. I'm sorry, there's no other answer. And you're uneducated to beat hell on the subject matter. You want to hate Charlie Kirk? Go watch every video the guy did, right? Watch 15, 20 minutes of it. You'll get enough. But if you want to hate somebody, understand why you hate them. I got a woman that's been leaving me crappy comments for 5 or 6 months. She doesn't curse, so I didn't get rid of any of them. You can probably go back and look at some of the stuff she said. You know, normally it's something along the lines of, please don't give this con man any money. I'm not getting rid of her. But I would love to have her come on and try to articulate why she says that about me. She doesn't know me. It wasn't even somebody that was on the channel. So what happened is she caught somebody saying something about me and went, I'm all in. That's my new belief. And that's what an echo chamber is. The loudest voice, especially when morality is not mandated. When you don't have a yardstick that everybody can agree on, and every person out there has their own morality, then the loudest and the most obnoxious voice will be able to probably get some traction. And every 4 to 8 years, we're going to do this number. And I got news for you. This isn't going to make me any friends. But I don't have a lot of friends.
Yeah, me too.
I do have you. Reese is a friend of mine as well. I have some friends. I don't have a lot of them. I'm going to lose more. I don't even, you know what? Those will be blocked. No, you know, it's frightening to me. It's frightening to me that there are people out there who are really happy. Aha. Tommy Bird, I don't think the decision is the right of the politicians. Again, hopefully, With thought and prayer, they will make the right decisions. If not, God will have to have the last word. Okay. And this is a logical approach. I assume you're still talking about pro-life. This is kind of a logical approach. But again, so we're leaving this into the hands of every single person, as opposed to having a yardstick by which everybody has to be judged. And the problem with that is that we go through these cycles, right? 10 years, we think this is the greatest thing in the world. And then society changes and we have a new moral compass. And that new moral compass thinks eugenics is cool. We've already done this in the United States. Thinks the frontal lobotomy is cool. We already did this in the United States. These were absolutely abhorrent things that we did. And I'm promising you right now, as God made little green apples, if we're around in 20 years, we're going to be having the same discussion about allowing 8-year-olds to start hormone therapy and cut off their private parts. At 8 years old, you know what I wanted to be? Batman. And you're going to let me decide whether or not I should have male genitalia or female? If your best friend at the age of 8 decides that they want to go one direction, I would have gone with them. I had one friend, his name was Steve. And everything I did, he did. If I did something, he did it. If he had decided he was going to be transgender, I would have. Plain and simple. I know this. I know it. What's frightening is there's also a lot of people out there like me who are just as horrified by the murder, but still thought Kirk was generally a hateful person. Tell me why, Propane. Seriously, this is good stuff. Tell me why he's a hateful person. Tell me one thing that Charlie Kirk said that made him hateful. The reason that Charlie Kirk was hated because he had a moral compass that he was absolutely 100% certain of. And we can't handle that in society. It's something that we literally can't handle. And the reason we can't handle it is because we have allowed anything to fly for so long. But the definition of somebody not hateful is a person that can sit down across from somebody that they disagree with on virtually everything and have a conversation without raising their voice or getting angry and articulate their point and respect the other person for articulating their point. If you could point to one thing, and I'm not picking on you, but this is the problem. People say, well, you know what? He was just you cannot give me an example of what makes this man hateful. I promise you can't. And do you know why I know this? I'll tell you a little story. I ended up at a prison where you had the ability to listen to satellite radio because we were so in the freaking sticks that you couldn't get an FM station. That was it. Couldn't get an FM station. So we were allowed to listen, and I could get Charlie Kirk on the radio. And listening to him, he's not a hateful guy. He just has a moral compass that is absolutely etched in stone. And I don't want to bust anyone's chops, but do a little research and find me some places where law worked beautifully, where they weren't basing the law on some form of theism. You understand? Look, alcoholics and drug addicts for millennia, it was just assumed that there's nothing you can do about it. It's nothing you can do about it. It's a disease that if you catch, you're just going to die a drug addict, and hopefully you don't hurt anybody along the way. And two drunks got together and said, I'll keep you from getting drunk tomorrow. You keep me from getting drunk tomorrow. And they came up with a system that millions and millions of people have gotten sober through, literally hundreds of millions by this point. And the first step is admitting that you are powerless over this substance. But the second step is coming to believe that a power greater than yourselves can restore you to sanity. Without a power greater than yourselves, and I've been doing this for 4 years. Please don't argue this point with me. I've been doing this for 4 years. No human should be canonized. Of all things that we have lived on this earth, the only one that deserves accolades or put on this pedestal is Jesus, in my humble opinion. With all due respect, Joan, I'm not canonizing anybody. That's a Catholic Church thing, by the way. I don't canonize anybody. But he wasn't hateful, and you can't prove to me that he was. And if you just want to spout from something that you don't know about, then you got to tell me what makes the man hateful. I'm not saying that he walked on water. I'm saying he had a moral compass that he could articulate. And that's the reason people hated him. He didn't say, I don't like black people. He didn't say, I don't like gay people. In fact, one of his best friends, right, went out to dinner with him regularly, with he and his husband. He said, I believe marriage should be between a man and a woman. I do too. Does that make me a bad person? I don't care if two people want to live together of any gender and spend the rest of their life together. But a marriage, to me, is a sanctified thing. I'm sorry. And once you start saying, well, it doesn't, you can marry, it's not fair, give them all the same rights. Don't call it marriage. And the reason for that is, where do you draw the line? Can I marry 6 people? Because my love is different than the other person's love. They just like, man, what if I'm bisexual? Can I marry a man and a woman? Why not? Because once you start to lower that rung, can I marry my horse? Of course not, Tommy. Don't say of course not. Because once you say marriage could be between anybody, at some point there'll be somebody in front of the Supreme Court saying, I'm in love with my horse. There are people in love with AI. Should that be cool? Can they marry AI? See, this is morality based on one person at a time. Whatever your moral compass is, that can't work in a society. So we have to have a discussion of some kind about what the moral compass is going to be. There are people out there that believe that it's okay to kill someone. And you go, well, of course it isn't. Why isn't it? What is the moral compass that says it's not okay to kill somebody? And don't say, well, that's obvious, because it's not to a lot of people. So you have to put laws in place that if you do something, here will be the punishment. But if you're not having a conversation about why something is moral or why something isn't, that was the discussion that Charlie Kirk had with people. And he could articulate what his point was. And the other people, I have watched no less than 1,000 people leave the podium after debating Charlie Kirk and say, hey, F you or F the government. Charlie never said any of that. He'd throw him a hat, right? He'd say, thanks for coming by. I would love for somebody to be able to articulate that. What does canonize mean? In the Catholic Church, it takes a human being and makes them a saint. I have a hard time not raising my voice. I get frustrated and passionate. I raise my voice all the time. I'm not raising it at somebody. I'm raising it at a camera. And I'll tell you something right now. I don't like the people that debated Charlie Kirk, not because of their beliefs. Hey, that's not it. I love Bill Maher. I agree with nothing that Bill Maher agrees with, other than free speech is sacrosanct. So Reese, the Catholic Church will find somebody that did something fantastic. Mother Teresa becomes canonized. Now she's a saint. Now she's Saint Teresa. That process is called canonization. And I noticed that our boy left and didn't tell me why. He had some way to tell me why Charlie Kirk was a hateful person. And I'll tell you something. You want to make my point? Pop up on the screen and say, well, the guy was a hateful person. And then don't give me one reason why. You just walk away. And the reason is because you heard someone say it and you've been repeating it for years. And that's why that guy on the roof shot Charlie Kirk. He shot him because he was a fascist. I've never seen anybody less of a fascist. Well, Joan, you're not doing debate or discussion, with all due respect, right? You think that this man, I'm canonizing this man, right? And he shouldn't be canonized. You can't give me one reason that you think this guy isn't kind. You don't think he's kind. You've made it clear, but you can't articulate why you don't think he's kind. Doesn't stop me from loving you, but I don't have anything in my life that I can't articulate exactly why I believe. And a lot of that has to do with a moral compass, something that is greater than me that answers a lot of these questions. Right? So why is murder wrong? Because we are a creation made in the image of God. In my opinion, I'm just telling you what I believe. We're made in the image of God. Killing that is about the lowest thing on planet Earth. And you have people say, what about animals? Let me tell you something about animals, because this is a huge argument. People say, well, we don't treat animals that way, right? Animals live in a completely different world, right? They will attack each other and rip each other's throats out to the end. And it's not considered murder. Right? Why? Because they're animals. We aren't. We are sentient at a different level. We understand acutely that we are created, because no matter where you go, anywhere in the world, they all have a faith in something greater than themselves. I don't mean every person, but every culture, going back to about the time that you either believe we were created out of a puddle or however you believe we got here, jumped off an alien ship, whatever the case may be. But we will be, in 20 years, talking about what we did to kids. They will be suing because of what they allowed to happen to children. Either way, he was simply an internet celebrity. He doesn't deserve the level of attention he's received. Bill Davis, the level of attention he's received is because he was murdered in front of his family by somebody that hated him for what he spoke about. And because of that, a lot of people that have kept their mouths shut for a very long period of time because of the threat of pushback from the haters. And these are haters. Look, Roseanne Barr made a comment. It was disgusting, right? And they ran her off of ABC like there was no tomorrow. And everybody on The View and everybody on late night TV said, nah, you can't let people talk like that. They weren't yelling about free speech. They're yelling about free speech for Jimmy Kimmel, right? They're rallying like hell for free speech about Jimmy Kimmel. The hypocrisy is absolutely amazing, right? He had no law degree. He wasn't an expert in governance. You are so dead on balls, off accurate. It is terrifying. Terrifying. You don't need a degree to learn anything. Trust me. I went into prison stupid. Didn't come out that way. You don't need it. And I got a friggin' degree, and it was an ultimate waste of time. But you don't need a degree to be intelligent. We live in a day where I can pick up that phone and say, tell me about Hammurabi's Law. And it will take me back to the date, give me all of the information. I can research anything in real time. Instead, I would go to a college, get $120,000 in debt to get indoctrinated by professors that had an absolute desire to turn me into a voter for one party or another. Now, realistically, if you do a little research and you look up what percentage, right? What percentage of people that work as tenured professors in college identify as liberal versus conservative? If we're in a country of fairness, you would hope that's 50-50, right? What if it was 70-30? Would that be a problem? What if it was 80-20? What if it was 90-10? You're sending your kids there, paying a fortune to do it. When they get out, they can't get a job in their own field, right? This is how many college graduates are living in their parents' basements? Huh? He was absolutely as well-versed in governance as anyone you ever want to come across. Seriously. Have you ever watched one debate of him with anybody? They would say, so-and-so's got a terrible cabinet, and he would rip off every single person in the cabinet without notes. This man knew an awful lot, and he spent all of his life studying from about the age of 18 on. Consider that at 18 he started this, right? Do you know that there was a record made last year, and the name of the song was Charlie Kirk Dead at 31? That's kind of nasty, right? It's kind of nasty. Yeah, he's incredibly smart. He's also incredibly articulate, and he didn't get angry. And that pisses off people who debate with you because they want to yell at you, right? In the last couple of days, I had somebody over email say, stop yelling at me. I sent them an email. I didn't put anything in capital letters. I just said what I'm saying to everyone else. Explain to me what your point is. Bill says he wasn't an expert in governance. Then who is? Because this guy spent a crap load of time studying just that. He wasn't successful, and he wasn't just an internet guy. I'm an internet guy. He was an absolute sensation. And his future within the party that he believed in, it was almost among, like, you go to CPAC or you go to any of the places where the people on the conservative side tend to gather. And it was almost a foregone conclusion that this man would eventually run for president. And at the age of 18, he used that ruler, that yardstick, to make sure that he wasn't going to live in a way that they were going to dig up dirt on him. One of the biggest things you're going to hear out there, too, is that he put his phone up like this one day, right? And when his phone was up, you could see on there Grindr. And Grindr is a hookup app for gay people. It didn't happen. It never happened. But it is so prevalent that I've gotten 20 people that said to me, the guy was gay. He held up his phone and you could see a Grindr. Never happened. Never happened. But we live in a day and age. He had a following, but that's not the same thing as actually working. Bill Davis, with all due respect, bud, he spent probably 12 hours a day prepping for his audience. That's not working? Honestly, he flew from one city to the other. Now listen, I've done that. I did that for damn near a decade. Every single week speaking in a different city. I don't think you have any idea how much work that is. Honest to God, I don't think you have any idea how much work that is. The difference is I was going into a group of people that wanted me there. He was walking into a camp of people that he knew was going to hate him. In fact, he had been told by multiple parties that it was not safe to do what he was going to do this year. But his beliefs put him on the road. He knew there was a chance of this happening. He used to wear a bulletproof vest at almost every event. They're claiming now he wasn't wearing one at that event. I can't weigh in on that. I can't. But the conspiracy theories are going to be flying. And the reason that they're going to be flying is because there's just too much that stinks. We've never seen an assassination where two people, admittedly, after being arrested, said they caused the disturbance that they did because they wanted to help the shooter get away. That's not normal. And it's going to lead to a lot of people who are going to come up with a lot of theories. By the way, Bill, I'm not mad at you, and I hope nobody else is, but that statement is absolutely asinine. I don't think you can imagine what it's like. He's living the life of a rock star without the drugs and the women. You're traveling to a different city. You're living in a hotel. You got to go set up. You got to sit in the sun if you're in Texas. You got to sit in the cold if you're in, right? These are all parts of things that were really difficult to do. Why didn't he stand behind bulletproof glass? To me, that is common sense. It also looks like cowardice to the people that you're talking to, right? He was a man whose yardstick, and you don't have to agree with me. I promise you don't. But his yardstick believed very strongly, like it says in Corinthians, right? That all good things work for God. So Charlie Kirk's death is going to end up, as in his belief system, his death is going to end up changing this planet in a way that his life might not have been able to, and he was willing to take that risk. He was not somebody that was going to hide behind bulletproof glass. In fact, allegedly, the last prayer the man said before he went out to speak was, "God, use me in any way you see fit." It's a dangerous prayer, right? And I'm of the firm belief, you don't have to agree with me, that God at that point said, "You can come home now, Charlie. You wait till you see what I'm going to do at your death." I'm talking. A lot of other people are talking. We're having conversations. Sometimes, Tommy, it sure looks like people are just afraid of Christianity. The foundation of our nation, that concept that they hate or are afraid of, is because their moral compass, possibly, they don't have a moral compass. I'm not trying to be a dickhead. But you can have a moral compass where you say, I would never kill anybody. There are people who are not Christians, of course, that would never kill anybody. But when you start getting down to the nuance subjects, like if somebody crosses our border illegally, should we send them back to their country? These are nuanced things. So every person you talk to has a different opinion. So you got sanctuary states that say, here, there's your law. We're letting anybody that comes in here illegally get a driver's license and drive and do any of the things that they want to do, right? Because if not, it's racist. No, it's breaking the law. They walked in here, broke the law. That carries a 5-year sentence in the feds. I did my time. What makes it bad for them? And they say, well, they separate them from their kids. I didn't get to hang out with Spanx Calhoun when I went to prison. I have a long criminal record. I never once pled no contest, nolo contendere, or any such thing. I was guilty of every crime I did. And I knew that they carried a prison sentence. I didn't whine and piss and moan about it. But if you come across a border illegally and do it, I can't come here and do that. Right? Yeah, there are rules you have to follow. Oh, unless we don't have a constant yardstick. If we allow every person in the country to have their own morality, you can have your own morality. The country can't. You can't allow entire segments of society to just say, well, because 1% of the population feels this way, we're going to redo our entire population. That's not logical. Racist, oh my God, I lived in several states and in many situations. However, what is going on today in our country, in fact, the world is just nuts. You're absolutely right. And here's the thing. I've been called a racist by more people. Every time I send Q an email, I'll say to him, 9 people called me a racist today. My best friend was black, and I lived in a federal prison. You should really get a look at what it's like having a black friend in a federal prison. I felt strongly enough about my convictions that I was willing to get stabbed by people for having him as a friend. That's a moral compass. His skin didn't mean anything to me. The content of his character is so much better than mine. In fact, arguably in the top 3 greatest people I've ever met. My brother-in-law was in the Pentagon on 9/11 because he works for a technology think tank that works directly for the federal government, and my sister is a lobbyist. I'm a civil engineer. Well, good. Good to have you here. Hopefully they survived that. That was an ugly day. The memorial was wonderful, and the worship music was so powerful, and Erica's statement, oh my God, says so much. Yeah, Pink, the artist, came out and said, what they should have played at that was, my point is I'm not some idiot that doesn't know what I'm talking about. I beg to differ. You said he was a hateful man, right? This is a guy who has hate in his heart. He shouldn't be. Or maybe that was propane. But articulate your point on why you don't like Charlie Kirk. That's what I'm asking you to do. I'm sure you're a hell of an engineer, right? That intelligence has nothing to do with the subject matter, right? That's not what we're talking about. I can tell you a lot about bank robbery. It's probably not going to be relevant. Let's talk about the subject matter at hand and have some dialogue. What is it about Charlie Kirk that was hateful? I'd love for somebody to articulate that. Honest to God, I would, because I hear it 400 times a day. He was firm in his beliefs and he could articulate them. Imagine, right, if we were talking about engineering or your particular place of expertise. And I said, yeah, I've built a couple of houses. Why don't, we're there. No, it's the scary concept because we now live in a world that because there is no more, because there's no moral compass, we have divided the world into a million subsects. And the proof to that is just all you have to look at is our last press secretary, who every time she took the podium needed to tell you that she was a black woman and she was gay, right? We have to keep parsing this down. Now, did you want vaccine or not? That's a smaller segment, right? Do you believe in gun control? That's a smaller segment. And this is by design. Make no mistake, this is by design. And the design is to have us hate each other, because if we hate each other, then we need more laws to protect the white guys from the black guys and the Mexican people from the white people. And all of this hate is being engineered. It's being engineered. Thank you so much, Allie B from Tennessee. You know what? This made the video worth doing because this bad boy has been demonetized 30 times since I started. No, Bill thinks he didn't deserve the attention he got and that he didn't work that hard. Yeah, the not working hard thing really does sound, with all due respect, ignorant as all get out. He's done more from the age of 18 to 31 than I've ever seen any other person do. For real. He built Turning Point USA into a behemoth, and he started it at 18. This is a guy that didn't work? Honestly, Bill, come on, man. You can do better than that. You're a smart guy. You have your points. Tell me how that's not working. And again, kind of my wheelhouse. I would go on the road and do 2-hour shows. I would do 3 of them a week, right? 1 hour and 45 minutes. And I would do 3 of them a week. Sometimes I would do 4 of them a week, depending on what city we went to. But I did that for 10 years. And you get burned out from being on the road. Most people hate air travel. Can you imagine doing it 50 or 60 times in a 4-month period of time? Imagine waking up, picking up the phone next to the bed, dialing 0 and go, this is going to sound stupid. What state am I in? I lived that for a really long time. You can't imagine the amount of work it is. You can't. I was whacked on dope. This guy did it sober. Everybody that I knew who had that job was whacked on dope. This guy didn't do that, right? I'm not busting you. I promise I'm not. I'd like to be able to have a conversation, but there are points. If you make a point, you need to be able to articulate it, right? That's not work. Explain to me how that's not work. That man prepped more. He spent more time reading about everything. Do you realize he was writing a book on the Torah? And he's not Jewish. This was a very, very intelligent and articulated cat. And I'm not canonizing him. Everybody's a sinner. What I'm saying is he had a moral compass that he could explain better than anyone you were ever going to meet. And that's why they killed him. That's it. They could not debate him. You can't debate somebody whose beliefs are based on something, because the people coming up to debate, every one of them has a different yardstick. One guy gets up and says, well, I do believe that abortion, should be illegal. However, I do believe that, we need to allow trans people to come into elementary schools and read to kids, because if not, you're saying that they're not worthy of reading to kids. No, I'm saying nobody in a thong is worthy of reading to kids. I love women. I don't want to see women in thongs in daycare centers or elementary schools. Does that make me an ass? I can articulate why that isn't a good thing. I can tell you why I think that threatens our kids. We don't want to normalize anything until a kid is old enough to decide what it is he wants. But we're normalizing stuff that isn't normal. I'm sorry. I mean, truthfully, the Dolphin Queen King is my favorite example. The non-binary Dolphin Queen King. I'm not making it up. Spoke at the Democratic convention, got up and said, I identify as a non-binary Dolphin Queen King. I challenge you to tell me what the hell that means. Right? I don't want to see men that believe that they are women going into my daughter's changing room. You intolerant piece of crap, Chris. What's wrong with you? I'm kidding. Well, if the concept is Charlie did not work for what he created, then you better watch out, because direct powers from above directly through. Yeah, you know something? There are a lot of people whose life changed, right, because of him. And I know this because every single time the guy went to one of these campuses, someone would get up and say, you're the reason I started going to church. Here's a little suspension of disbelief. Let's just for 1 second, right? and I don't believe this, it'll end up in a quote too someday. You'll hear this. Let's just say for the sake of argument, there's no God, right? There is no God. Would you still rather have your neighbor believing in the 10 commandments or not believing in the 10 commandments? If everybody that believes is deluded, you still come up with things like treat your neighbor as yourself, right? That people say you can't legislate morality. No, you can't. But if you're rooted in a religion, most of them say you take care of the poor, you take care of the sick, you take care of the elderly, right? You do unto others, you turn the other cheek. These are all concepts that are pretty wild. People who argue against Christianity is you shouldn't have to have a God to be a good person. Now, I agree. You don't need to have a God to be a good person. But good people are not the same thing as a government, right? So you don't necessarily even need to believe in a God, but you still have to have a yardstick by which you make decisions. Because if we don't do that, then we leave those decisions in the hands of 8 billion people on this planet. And your neighbor might decide that aborting children is fine. You decide it's not. The next neighbor decides, yeah, you can kill them at 3. Right? You go, no, that's crazy. No, it's not. If you don't, we have laws that say once the child is born, by the way, I'm sorry, but the other side literally wanted to give you days afterwards. Viable child comes out, takes a breath, you could still kill it. So when they say, when does conception start? They don't give a crap because it sure as hell starts once you take your first breath, right? I believe it starts way before that, but that's my humble opinion. And here's the other thing. The law of the land says that it's legal. Okay. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't change the fact that you're killing it. You're stopping a beating heart, right? You're killing a child made in the image of God. That's my opinion. It was also Charlie Kirk's opinion. I can articulate it. I can explain the problem with all of those things. Child learns most things up to the age of 7 or so, and it's the parents' job to raise their children, not the government or the schools. Correct. But I'll tell you what, how many of you got a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, right? How many people absolutely were for Black Lives Matter, but nobody went to their website. He went to their website and it said, the first thing it read, we wanted to abolish the nuclear family. No need for a mom and a dad or any of that garbage. Well, we've seen how that works. Go to prisons and find out what percentage of those guys didn't have a dad. And it'll terrify you. It's not my passion, but it's Q's. If he gets out, it's all he's going to talk about. It's all he is going to talk about because it destroyed his life. Now I talk about drugs because it destroyed mine. My issue is, I don't care what your beliefs are. We can have a conversation about them. But if you can't articulate the points of why you believe what you believe, with all due respect, that to me sounds like the Dunning-Kruger echo chamber, where you heard enough about Charlie Kirk that it's truthy at this point. Nothing that you're going to hear is going to sway you because you didn't take the time to do any freaking research. You let someone else do it for you. If you let other people do research for you, if you let other people tell you what somebody believes and what somebody else doesn't believe, you're going to end up on your face. Yeah, you know something? There has been an awful lot of things, and this is something that they love to bring up too. Look at all of the terrible things that the followers of Christianity have done, none of which were okay by the book, right? The book does not justify any of that. Now, we are all horrific sinners from birth. I'm sorry, we are, right? Whether you believe in a God or not, we are not the greatest of human beings. All of us tend to have issues, all of us, right? So I'm not judging the entire religion based on Catholic priests that did bad things to kids. I think those people should be shot in their face. After they're found guilty, I think they should be put out of their misery. They're not going to be cured. You know, there's enough science out there to prove that. The people that do that don't stop doing that. They should be killed. But that's not the book, right? That's not the yardstick. That's somebody that went outside of the book that they preach about. It's hypocrisy. It's even worse. Right? Ninth circle of hell kind of stuff. But that's not the Bible. You know, that doesn't happen to be the Bible. Wow. Jane Aldrich, thank you so much. You may need this for cat treats. The main point in this discussion, wished I'd paid more attention when he was alive. Well, here's the good news, right? Here's the good news. You can go find thousands of hours. John, have a great night. You can go find thousands of hours of him out there, right? Charlie got recorded everywhere he went. And my challenge to everybody, like the gentleman that just left or Propane or any of those people, go ahead. You got time on your hands. Go find me the examples of why this person is hateful. I would love to have it articulated. But I think you're going to have a hard time doing that. I don't follow people who are hateful. Unfortunately, a lot of the scared young women have done the A word and regretted it. You know, and that's something they don't tell you when you walk into Planned Parenthood, right? People have gone in there with cameras saying, I actually want to have this baby, and they talk you into an abortion. But on the other side, they don't say, let me tell you what percentage of women that do this end up later hating themselves or struggling with this or having it be a stumbling block in their life. Not all of them, right? And I hope that that's not something that happens. I don't wish that on anybody. But the law that we talk about is Roe v. Wade. You might want to do a little research on the woman that law is about, because she doesn't believe that abortion is a good thing anymore. Doesn't that tell you something? She is virulently anti-abortion now. That seems to me to be an odd thing. I think they just meant that he got famous via the internet, not that he's an influencer. Well, actually what he said was he got famous on the internet, and that's not work, right? They don't tell you about Margaret Sanger. No, they do not. No, they do not. And that would be pretty interesting if they did. Wasn't sure what the A word is. Abortion. It's hard. And this isn't an easy subject matter, but I got news for you. If I decide to go out tonight and buy 5 grams of cocaine and start walking around the city with it and I get caught, I made a decision to do something. I didn't take precautions, and I put myself in a very bad situation, and I have to deal with the repercussions of that bad situation. I can't wrap the cocaine in a condom to ensure that I don't get arrested or get in trouble. But you can take precautions to make sure you don't give birth. But what we've done is we have brought the bar down so low that people go, well, it's just another form of birth control, isn't it? Right? It's just another form of birth control. And then the reason for that is because the longer something becomes a part of society, then you get to a point where we as a people go, they don't matter. Babies in the womb don't have any rights. The question is, do babies in the womb have rights, or do they not? And that society's got to figure that out. Charlie Kirk didn't need to figure that out. He had a yardstick, and in his mind, it was clear as day. That's why they hated him. He wasn't the dictator. He wasn't forcing that on the country. He was articulating the beliefs of his faith, trying to have a conversation with people that didn't agree. I'm not canonizing him. I'm just hating on the people that don't get it. I know exactly what he owned. Joe Rogan makes millions off his podcast, but his opinions are no more valid than anyone else's because he makes money. Anyone see the lady that was raped by her own father and had the child because she knows it wasn't about her, but life she was carrying? God bless her, right? It's not a decision for everybody, but God bless her. You know, but that's her yardstick. Joe Rogan makes a tremendous amount from his podcast, right? He also does stuff on doing ayahuasca. He does stuff on mushrooms. He does stuff on cocaine. He does stuff on all kinds of drugs, which, I don't know, as a guy in sobriety, he doesn't really come out and say, maybe these things shouldn't be, taken lightly, right? I don't know that you can compare the two. Rogan is very, very successful. Honestly, I failed to see the comparisons. One is a pop culture guy that talks about things. One guy was actually trying to get communication to happen between people that disagreed. And he didn't do it in a hateful way. The people who hated him hated him because he did an excellent job of articulating his point when they couldn't articulate theirs. And the reason they can't articulate theirs is their yardstick moves, right? The more people they talk to, they meet a non-binary queen king, dolphin queen king. And then it shifts a little bit, like the shooter, right? The shooter decided that, he moved in someone who was transitioning and he fell in love with that person and decided Charlie Kirk needed to die because he was in love with a man that was trying to transition into being a woman. I admit I did it when I was 19 and I was scared at the time, but feel guilty now and do not think about it often. I am sorry if I brought that back up. I know that's not a good thing and I feel bad about that. I really do. And God bless you. That's a tough thing to say, honestly. Most people won't. And I don't hate anyone that's had it, right? I don't hate anybody for making that decision. But I'll tell you, one of the reasons I feel so strongly about it is because there are certain examples you get all the time, like the unwanted child whose parents aren't going to take care of it, right? And the child is just going to be neglected and abused. And that's my baby sister. At the age of 4, her parents would drop her off at a daycare center and not come back for 2 weeks. They were absolute degenerate alcoholics, and we adopted her. And she's had an amazing life, right? Just an amazing life. And when I was younger, my son's mother got impregnated by somebody else. And she was the valedictorian of her class. And everybody said to her, you should probably have an abortion. You're not going to get through school, right? You have so much potential. You could be a doctor. You could be this. And what guy's going to love you if you already have a kid? It's going to make it very difficult. I did, right? We don't spend a lot of time talking these days. But my son and I talk every single day. He's not mine by birth. Those are the 2 examples most often given, other than people that rape or incest. And you know what? I'll give you that. Rape and incest. Absolutely. If it's non-consensual and that woman wants to terminate the pregnancy, Charlie Kirk didn't believe that. His yardstick and my yardstick are very similar. But the reason that I say I'll give you that is because if you do, you take away the entire argument for the other side. I say, okay, in every one of those cases, I allow that. You cool with that? No. We want to be cool with it up until the last day of pregnancy, because the next day, that thing's going to be alive, right? But at 8 months, 3 weeks, and 20 whatever days, it's still what? Not yet a human? That's a slippery slope. When we start grading people by how old or how developed or how intelligent or how sentient, that sounds Nazi to me. I'm sorry, but maybe I got a different deal.
I've had enough of Bill, sorry. Seriously.
No, you know what? Here's the thing.
That's inflammatory. Abortion is not murder.
Hey, Bill, here's the thing. No, you know what? Tell me why abortion is not murder. You stick a needle into the baby's skull and you fire cyanidic acid into the skull cavity, right? And they will do it up until the last trimester. How's that not murder? You know what, Bill? You're yardstick and you're the perfect. Thank God Bill's here.
He's gone, sorry.
Well, that's okay, but thank God Bill is here. You understand? This is what I'm talking about. He can't articulate why it's not murder, because I guess until a child takes a breath. Now, I'm not telling anybody they got to stop, but from the age of 17 on, I've had to hear people go, there's not going to be any birth control next year, right? That's it. And every new generation of kids buys into it. No one's getting rid of birth control. No one's doing any of these things. And Roe v. Wade getting overturned gave it back to the states. I don't know how much you guys know about governance, Bill, but the idea originally was we were 50 states. You get it? And those 50 states, thank you so much. 1, 2, 3, 321 channel. I really, really appreciate the support. God bless. I was adopted actually, but I wouldn't have been able to do the adoption thing when I was 19. Blitz. I am the absolute first to say, please forgive yourself, right? That's a really young age. I don't hate anybody that makes a decision to do something like that. I just want a discussion about what is morality. Right? Who decides what morality is? If there isn't some form of thing that you can go back to and go, okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Bill Davis will never sit down and actually watch how peaceful Charlie Kirk was and how he articulated his point of view and his beliefs. Bill, you seem slightly filled with rage, my friend. We forgive. I love Christopher Cooper, man. You know what? I'm not mad at him. Charlie Kirk used to sit somebody across from him and talk to him for about 4 minutes. Then eventually he had to go, you know what? Thank you. Because if you can't tell me the things, I mean, honestly, your argument was that the guy's not, he's not a worker, and that, it's the cult of personality kind of argument, comparing him to Rogan. This is not at all what it was. Rogan talks about dog shit. He's out there for entertainment. We were talking about subject matters that are really important, right? Because once you get away from the society has decided this, then we do this every 4 to 8 years. And during some of those times, we allow people to go into schools dressed like strippers, right? Men pretending to be women dressed like strippers, or we allow men to go in and shower in the same locker rooms as our daughter. I understand you say I should go watch old tapes and change my mind. He was never on my radar. Shame on me. Don't assume me. No. No, what I said was, Jane, you said, I never watched him when he was alive. I said, the good news is there's 1,000 videos out there. If you ever want to go watch Charlie, he is, even if you don't agree with him, I don't agree with anything Bill Maher says. But if Bill Maher has somebody from the other side of the aisle, I never miss it because Bill's articulate as hell. And to be really honest, Bill is a classic liberal, right? A liberal in the sense of 1960s where free speech was everything. Liberals don't believe that anymore. In fact, John Kerry made a great speech. He's considered pretty much a liberal, right? He said, the First Amendment is really getting in the way of our freedoms. The First Amendment is getting in the way of our freedoms. The right to free speech, to worship any way you want, all of those things, sacrosanct. The number one amendment, that's getting in the way of freedoms. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I'm tired of hearing the phrase hate speech. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. People like to use it because they say, well, hate speech is the only speech that needs to be protected. Love speech, no one wants to get rid of that, right? Having the KKK march in your town sucks, but it is the basis of what made us different than everybody else. That you had the right to be an ass. You had the right to be a jerk. You had the right to be ignorant and hateful and racist because your right to free speech can't be impeded on, right? Terrible. Tommy, do you think men are equally vulnerable and should have access to birth control, to the birth control needle, allowing greater control over young men having children they are not ready for? I have no problem with any form of birth control, right? The only one that I would say that kind of bums me out is that the morning after pill. I don't have a problem with it being out there. I don't have a problem with any of these things. I don't have a problem with the abortion centers being there, but understand why it's there. Right? There was a time in this country where it was just considered murder. And the longer we do this, and once you start to devalue human life, then you end up with places like Sweden. Was it Sweden? No, something might have been Norway. There's a place out there right now, I can't remember which one, but they abort any child that has Down syndrome. It's a policy. Now, maybe you think that's okay. I don't. That's my yardstick. You can hate me for it, right? But please articulate why I'm wrong. I was done when the transvestites did the drag show for elementary school kids. Nope, done. Yeah, well, and once you let that happen, right? Yeah, feeling guilty for something that's in vogue. Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, I had a mullet. I had leather pants. I did a lot of things that I look back on now and go, man, that is just so bad. I'd have been really stoked, right, that I grew up in a time where I didn't have an option of changing my gender. Here's the thing. I wanted more than anything in the world to be to win a gold medal skiing moguls. Like nothing in the world would have made me happier than that. And to be really honest, in the day and age we're in right now, I might have just decided to identify as a woman because they'd had a real hard time competing with me. I was really close friends with one of the first women in the U.S. to ever win a gold medal in freestyle skiing. And on her best day of the week and on my worst day of the week, she could not compete. Not because she isn't a good skier, but because I am way bigger and way more muscular and just built different. They often give the parents a choice to have a baby if during the pregnancy they see abnormalities. Yeah, the powers that be want us all to think that every religion is the same when actually they're not. Christianity teaches us self-discipline and forgiveness of what is right. And I've said this before. I read all of those books. I read all of them, right? And they're not all created equal. They're not, but they're all very similar in a lot of ways. I saw enough of Charlie Kirk, the last horrible examples of humanity ego, kindness and decency. He made money from pain under God through the Lamb. Jesus' teachings to love, not hate. Okay, Christy, how did he hate? Help me out. Tell me how he hated. Give me one example of how he hated. Please help me with this. I'd like to go out on a high note. Christy, could you tell me one thing that made him hateful? We'll wait. Everyone was made perfectly in his image. Tara, I tend to believe the same thing, but I saw enough of Charlie Kirk, the last horrible example of humanity ego. Kindness and decency. He made money from pain. Okay, explain that to me, Christy. Don't come here with an opinion and not back it up. Because to be honest with you, that is just awful, right? The echo chamber. This is what perpetuates this going down the line. Someone will read this and go, well, explain to me a way he was hateful. One way, right? Explain to me one way that he made money off of pain. Okay, how did he profit off of pain? Make me understand this. He didn't divide us. He sat down to talk to people that disagreed with him. This is what divides us. When someone says a blanket statement, this man made money on pain. Tell me how he made money on pain. Tell me how he made money on pain. What that he did was profiting off of pain. This was a guy who believed enough in free speech to go into the den of people that didn't like him and have a very calm discussion. Maybe not on their side, but he didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse. He didn't spit. In fact, he offered them all an autographed hat before they left, even if they said F you to him. How did he make money on pain? You repeated yourself. You didn't define what you said. You repeated yourself. The next thing you're going to say is stop yelling at me, because that's usually the progression when you can't define what you believe. Charlie is hated because he had no problem defining what he believed at every single turn, because he had a yardstick by which all things were measured. But he didn't make money on pain. It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard, with all due respect. I'm here. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. But you're saying something without backing it up. And that's the problem with all of this, right? Just like he said, if I got on a plane and there was a black person behind the wheel, I would get off the plane. That was never said. But 99 out of 100 people will tell you that it was, because it's been repeated so many times that now you just can't say it otherwise. By discriminatory, horrible language and conduct. Once again, Christy, these are generalizations. Give me an example of Charlie Kirk saying something discriminatory or horrible. These are not answers. They're generalities. You're repeating what you heard. I'm sure you watched him. Give me an example of something he said that was discriminatory. This is honestly the problem. This is Dunning-Kruger effect. You have an opinion that you cannot back up. That's a problem. Do you not see that? You're repeating what you said. That doesn't make it so, right? Tell me exactly how he was discriminatory and what was his horrible language and conduct. Give me an example. I'll give you all the time to type you want. He didn't profit from pain. That's pure insanity. He wanted a country that wasn't split in half, right? Due to people having different viewpoints. No, he wanted to give people an opportunity to express themselves. Very often, those people lost the arguments because they do what my friend is doing right now. Well, he's hateful. Well, how is he hateful? Well, he's discriminatory and he says bad things. Okay, give me an example of something that was discriminatory or something bad that he said. He believed in meritocracy, right? If you have never heard that term before, it is somebody being hired based on the content of their character and their ability, merit, right? Not based on skin color. So all of the people that are talking about DEI and all that's the definition of racist. If somebody comes in and is talented and you say, I will not hire you because of the color of your skin, that is racism. You can dress it up in all kinds of cool letters. That's racism, right? And the worst part is, their argument is, well, you got to give them a chance because they can't compete. That's the most racist statement on earth. Some of the most intelligent people I've ever met have been black. I can agree with your opinions. I can understand. I am able to respond. Takes time. He said DEI, black women couldn't fly a plane. No, you're an ignoramus. I'm sorry. On this subject matter, that was never said. Here's what he said so that I can help you out on this, Christy. And with all due respect, this is the proof of exactly why we have a problem. This is the reason. I'm not canonizing this man, but I'm challenging the people that call him hateful. He did not say women can't fly a plane. By the way, it was a black man, not a woman. And what he said was this: it's frightening that if you're getting on a plane and you look in the cockpit, what you want to see is the most talented person possible flying that plane. Meritocracy. Hire them because they're the best. How many hours do they have flying a 737-700, right? Whatever. Having the idea of merit. If you take DEI and you say, we're not going to hire white people, right? Because we have too many of them. Then you're going to end up at some point hiring someone who has way less flight time. And he said, it's scary to look in there and wonder whether or not the person was hired because of DEI. Because if someone's flying your plane, you want the best person flying. He finished the sentence with, if the black person is the best candidate, I don't care what skin color he is. I want him flying. That is the opposite of racist, Christy. It is the exact opposite of racist. In fact, DEI is the most racist thing in the world. What it says is this: black people aren't smart enough to compete. So we're going to have to give them a chance by doing this, this, and this. That is absolutely horrific. It is the most, we would call it a dry racism in prison, right? Like a dry snitch. You're not really telling on somebody, right? You go up and say, whoa, what just happened in cell 20? You didn't tell on anybody, but you got the cops walking over. They used to call it a dry snitch. He never said that. In fact, if you look it up, you're going to find out that I believe it was the Sacramento paper that printed that and then had to go back and do a retraction. And most of the other things that, with all due respect, people like you spit out, they heard someone say it. They didn't hear Charlie Kirk say it, right? At all. They heard somebody say it. And then they repeat it as if it's a fact. That is one of the scariest things in communication. And it's destroying us. It's destroying us. For real. It's called, again, I'm sorry, but it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And what it means is that you don't know enough about the subject matter to know that you're wrong. It's a terrifying concept. And what makes it worse is echo chambers, where you go into places where everybody tells you you're right. And they go, yeah, that racist SOB. He said a black woman can't fly a plane. He said a black man. But he didn't say he couldn't fly a plane. He wants the best pilot behind the seat, regardless of the skin color. There's no hate there. I want that. Meritocracy. You know who else wanted it? Martin Luther King. In the I Have a Dream speech, he said, I dream of a land where children will be judged on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. DEI says we'll judge you on the color of your skin, not the content of your character.
We're alive now, we kill him.
Yeah. If Martin Luther King were alive now, the way we're talking would kill him. Hidden Figures movie, NASA. Donald Trump is a multiple bankruptcy, legal doc approved. So DT not qualified. It goes both ways. What is the equivalent of DEI? I don't understand your question.
The entire country voted for him, so just take that.
I'll bet you, Christy, you know that, are you another one that believes Donald Trump was convicted of rape? Dead serious. Do you believe that Donald Trump was convicted of rape? I'm curious. This is a terrifying concept, people, but this is it on display. And I'm sorry, Christy, but you opened your mouth, right? You're debating something that you don't have the chops, with all due respect. Go research your point. So when you come here, you can tell me these things. You jumped off Charlie Kirk to start talking about Donald Trump because you cannot give me one example of why you hate this man. You hate this guy because you heard asshats that hate him tell a lie about him. She's vomiting what she heard, says Todd, and with all due respect, that's exactly what you're doing. You're puppeting back. Well, then do me a favor. Send me an email, and tomorrow night you can come on and talk to me. And between now and then, you can go find every example of what Charlie Kirk said that is hateful or racist or any of those things, and we can come on. I yell at the camera. I will never yell at a guest. Go back and watch every one I've ever done. I don't yell at guests. But come on here and we can talk about it. Because you changed the subject. My question to you was quite simple. Give me examples of why this man is hateful. The first one that you gave me is objectively fiction. It has been disproven 100 times. 90% of America thinks Donald Trump was convicted of rape. He was not. It never happened. But that's how the press, talked about it. They celebrated it. It never happened. And I'm not a Trump fan, but I'm a fan of truth. I'm a fan of truth. She threw up her word salad. No, what she did is change the subject. And you know something? It's not a bad idea, right? That's what Saul Alinsky said. If you can't answer the question asked, answer a different one. Well, that doesn't fly. Not if you're going to say somebody is hateful. I would never say that somebody is hateful if I couldn't back it up. I could talk about the people who hate me, and I can give you one example of another, right? They have a death pool on me. I get 20 death threats a month, 30 death threats a month. I can tell you why people hate me. I can articulate who they are and why I say they're a hater. You don't like Charlie Kirk, and you don't know why you don't like him. If that doesn't scare the hell out of everybody here, well, then we've really lost our way, haven't we? Look at this. Kristen Melinda with a factual comment. Hidden Figures is a good film, but has some historical inaccuracies. Segregated facilities in NASA were abolished in 1958. But you know what? Suspension of disbelief, right? We change stuff because it's interesting. What the fox? I just wanted to say that. All right, people, I should probably wrap this up. Send me an email, TommyScoville@gmail.com. That goes to all of you. You want to come on here and tell me why Charlie Kirk was a hater? I really would look forward to that. You want to come on and tell me why I'm an idiot? Come on, send me an email. Be more than happy to have you come on here. Now, I'll save you a little bit of time. If you're a person who can't keep an F-bomb out of your mouth for an hour, I don't want you on here, right? But if you can come on and articulate your point, come on. I do not hate. Sure, I'm okay to meet in the middle. Agree to disagree. You've watched Charlie Kirk, and with all due respect, I'm going to leave on this note. I love you, Christy. I really do, Christy. However, you still did not answer a question. You said the man was hateful. I said why. Do you have any idea how ugly it is to call someone hateful without having any ability to back it up? That is the definition of evil as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying you are. Your action is wrong. The behavior, not you. I'm sure you're a great person. And you know what? Everybody is susceptible to this. But my challenge has been to everybody. If you have an opinion, make sure you can figure out what that opinion is based on. You tell me that the man is hateful, and you can't tell me one thing that makes him hateful. The one example that you gave is absolute fiction. And you didn't come up with a second one. Between now and the next time I see you, put a little love in your heart. And Christy, you can come on here in person so I can tell you I love you to your face. I mean it. So I can tell you to your face that I love you. Please come on. Between now and the next time I see you, do me a favor, put a little love in your heart. Yeah, and just for the record, what Trump was convicted of was slander. Look it up. There was never been charged with sexual offense that he was convicted of. It's absolute BS. But 9 out of 10 people believe it. I will see you on the next one. And I love you all. That goes for you too, Christy. Keep coming back. God bless you. The pet wellness coach, that may be the coolest name I have ever heard. For real. How cool is that? Thank you for the support. I'm going to keep having conversations that are uncomfortable. I think it's healthy. I really do. I think it's healthy. Christy, thank you for being here. Bill, not so much. What was his name?
Bill and then propane.
Bill and propane. You know what, Christy? Here, look at this. My hat's off to you. You stayed here. You had a conversation. And for that, I respect the crap out of that. The last two didn't do such a good job. I don't agree with you, but I love you. We'll see you on the next one, peeps. I'm Tommy. Take it easy.